We are so thrilled to welcome you all, more than 1,500 registrants, to the 2022 Action Forum to End Social Isolation and Loneliness, where we will explore the role of policy, practice, and place in creating a more connected society. The Action Forum is the annual conference hosted by the Foundation for Social Connection, with support, of course, from our sister organization, the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness. I'm hoping that many of you know who I am and my partner here, Andrew McPherson. I'm Eddie Garcia. I'm the founder and board chair of the Foundation for Social Connection.
And I'm Andrew McPherson, founder and board chair of the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness. We'd like to start by thanking you, the change makers, for joining us today from across the country and around the world to further our mutual efforts to strengthen social connection for all. We're humbled to hear from such impactful voices over the next 3 days. But before we dive into our agenda, we want to share some brief background on who we are.
Yes, of course. So founded in 2020 with the vision for all Americans to have the opportunities necessary to live a socially connected life, the Foundation for Social Connection engages in education, increasing public awareness, promoting innovative research, and spurring the development and implementation of evidence-based models that address social isolation and loneliness.
The Foundation's sister organization, the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness, was founded in 2018 to convene diverse stakeholders to act as a catalyst of change, advocating for nationwide US-based public policies and raising broad awareness to address this challenge head-on.
And as we know, loneliness and social isolation were prevalent long before the COVID-19 pandemic brought it to the forefront. And it affected our communities, our loved ones, and our own ability to thrive. Evidence reveals that social isolation and loneliness are issues that persist and greatly impact our health and well-being if not addressed at the individual level and at various levels of potential impact, from broad social influencers to how we show up in our organizations, to the way our communities are designed, and more. Countless studies have shown that rates of social disconnection have been on the rise since before the pandemic, and many high-risk populations experience spikes in loneliness and social isolation during the pandemic that have not subsided.
And what's more concerning are the devastating impacts that this has on our ability to thrive as individuals and communities. We all know the powerful evidence. For example, data from 16 longitudinal studies found that poor social relationships predicted a 29% increased risk of coronary heart disease and a 32% increased risk for stroke, a 55% increased risk of hospital readmissions for heart failure patients, and correlations to increased risk of poor diabetes self-management, malnutrition, frailty in older adults, and yes, lack of vaccine uptake. From a mental health standpoint, certain age groups, notably adolescents, young adults, and older adults, seem to be particularly at risk of depression, substance abuse, and suicide when not socially connected. Indeed, Eddie, as we all know, there is much work to be done to reach our goal of a connected, healthy, and fulfilled population. And we, among many others, pledge to continue to work until that goal is met. This commitment to create a more connected world is what brings us all here today on the week of World Mental Health Day, just yesterday, as part of this global movement. Throughout these 3 days, you can expect to hear commitments to action made by our partners far and wide. And these pledges inspire action and address social isolation and loneliness head on. These commitments to action will also be made available on our website for future viewing. And now we're thrilled to dive into our agenda.
Yes, we certainly are thrilled, Andrew. And what a start we have today. I'm immensely honored to introduce our esteemed keynote speaker, Miss Goldie Hawn. As you know, Goldie Hawn is an Academy Award-winning actress, producer, director, best-selling author, and youth advocate. On the latter, in fact, Ms. Hawn created the Goldie Hawn Foundation, a public charity with a mission to equip children with the social and emotional skills they need to lead smarter, healthier, happier, and ultimately more productive lives. Alarmed by increases in school violence, youth depression, and suicide, and the persistent failure of the education system to help children cope with increasingly stressful lives, Hawn started her foundation in 2003, applying cutting-edge scientific research to create education programs that support the social and emotional development of children. Working with leading neuroscientists, educators, psychologists, and researchers, her foundation developed MindUP, an evidence-based curriculum and teaching model that provides tools to help children self-regulate and understand their own emotions, moods, and behaviors, reduce stress and anxiety, sharpen concentration, increase empathy, and even improve academic performance. Ms. Hawn authored 2 best-selling books, a memoir, A Lotus Grows in the Mud, in 2005, and in 2011, 10 Mindful Minutes, offering guidance on raising healthy, joyful, and resilient children. In 2015, Hawn released 10 Mindful Minutes, a journal, a practice application to her last book, offering prompts and exercises to enhance the reader's daily life through mindful practice. Ms. Hawn has dedicated much of her life's work to creating innovative solutions to help children thrive for a better world. Please join me in welcoming her to the 2022 Action Forum to End Social Isolation and Loneliness.
Hi everyone, I'm Goldie Hawn. I'm really happy to be here to talk to you about mental health, about where we are today in this unbelievably challenging times. But about 20 years ago, I started looking at children's mental health and their mental stability, really. And I thought, they're kids, they can't be too bad off. Although I did some things where I realized children were really showing signs of disturbances. But then I looked at all the data, what was going on during this 20 years ago. And already our children, our young babies, 10 to 15, were committing suicide. And that the data on the anxiety levels and the fear-based levels and the dropouts of school, there was so much to take an action, which is what I did. I took an action. I decided that if I could do anything during this time period, after obviously 9/11 is when I started it, but it's because our children were going to face a world very different than the world I knew. And as it turned out, we are now 20 years later. MindUP is a program that I created because of it, which is basically brain-based, because we ask children to use their brain, but nobody tells them about their brain. But what we've learned is that it's really for everyone. Everyone needs to have some understanding of their brain and also of the way that they feel, to have some understanding of why they are having the emotions that they have that are driving their life. So we learn through our children, through creating the MindUP program, which is now in schools all over the world, in elementary schools. I'm very happy to say that it has become more of a mental health program, stabilizing the destabilized, and giving children all these tools to be able to self-regulate. So I wanted to share with you today a little bit about how important that is for adults, how important it is for what our children are doing in the classroom. These are 3 brain breaks a day. They understand how their brain is working because they learn now about parts of their brain that they can actually quiet down through breath, through focus, through quieting the mind. Not for long, 3 minutes, 3 times a day they do it, but they now understand more of what they do to self-regulate, to make themselves happier. But now it's time to talk about this for adults. After our pandemic, after the downturn of, again, our economy, the war that we're dealing with right now, I mean, we are at the high point of polarization, of people not getting along, people angry at each other. People who are perfectly fine people are saying terrible things about their opponents. I mean, it's a bit like kids in a sandbox that have no self-regulation. And all of that is contagious. It's on the news, it's online, it's TikTok, it's this talk, it's whatever it is. At the end of the day, it's consumed by our brain. Our brain it's very sticky, and it becomes a kind of what you call contagion, just like COVID. So we have to realize that what we say, what we listen to, what our choices are, these are the things that we have to know, but to become aware that this is not a good thing to put in your brain, because contagious thoughts will actually become a part of your thoughts. So you now hang out with people who basically are depressed, you're going to get depressed. The brain does that. It's kind of amazing of how these mirror neurons and the empathy that we feel for others can create the stick and glue of sometimes ideas and notions and levels of me against you and my team against your team. And that way we are going to be lonely. We are going to have a way of being where some of us just want to retreat. What am I going to do? Who are my real friends? My goodness, if you're voting for this person, you're not my friend. If you're going to not do this kind of thing, you're not my friend. And we seem to be sort of taking pieces of our friendships, basically looking at them and deciding it's not what we want to be associated with. At the end of the day, one of the areas that we have to realize is that we have close friendships, but then we have acquaintances. Maybe that's a lot. Maybe it's too many. But those of us, and I have been lonely, I know what loneliness is. I know I make you laugh, say, lonely at the top. But I have been lonely. I was lonely when I first started this program, when I was, first started into show business, rather. And that's when I suddenly was picked out of a chorus line. Of all the people that I knew or that I was beginning to know in a strange place like California or Hollywood, and then I was put into a whole different acting job because somebody saw me and thought I was whatever, and next thing you know, I'm not dancing anymore. So I had anxiety. And I sat in a big blue round chair and I drank tea and I saw a doctor. I tried to figure out what was wrong with me. And ultimately I did. I figured it out because I took charge. I didn't want to feel unhappy. I didn't want to feel neurotic, to feel scared, to feel uncertain. I wanted to understand more about it. So I think that one of the areas that we have to be honest with ourselves is if we're feeling lonely or sad, it's okay. That can happen. We don't want it to live long in your mind, your psyche, because it affects your body and your health. What you have to do is work toward the better part of yourself. Tell yourself different stories and be able to know that there are friends out there. There are people, if you open up, you will find friends. You will find acquaintances. And also, one of my favorite things, of course, are my 3 dogs. Dogs will really help you get out of yourself to learn to love and feel connected. Because connection is a one area toward long life, health, and happiness. Communication, talking to people, even strangers. These are the things that we need to do as humans because we are social animals. So there are various things that are going on. Depression is happening. We're looking at all kinds of issues we've got our mental health, basically challenges today. But there are things that we can do. One of them is gratitude. It sounds like a lightweight, great. No. Gratitude has been researched over and over again. It's one of the most powerful things that we can do in order to pull ourselves out of the doldrums, out of depression. It has pulled people out of beds from depression when they write 3 times what they're grateful for, 3 times, 5 times a day. It sounds so simple, but it's really what it's doing is it's changing the brain, changing the neurons, how we fire. And when things fire together, they wire together. So to improve a better outlook of your day, it's a simple request, which is to really think, I don't care how small it is, what is it you're grateful for? What is it you care about? What is it? It could be, and I know there's so much tragedy going on right now. It could be something as beautiful as a walk. It could be something as great as some flower you saw. It could be as great as some greatest hamburger you ever ate. It doesn't have to be deep. It just has to get you into a train of thought that defaults better to something that's positive than all the negative aspects of what we're going through today. Attaching onto them, owning them, wondering what's going to happen, trying to have some kind of undo your uncertainty. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes we're not in that control, but you are control of you. And that is the most important thing to remember. Nobody controls you but you. And remember that voice in your head. Change it because you're worth it. You're worth every single thing you do to make you feel better. From waking up in the morning and taking big, deep breaths, from before you get out of bed, just go there and say, I'm going to make this day the best there is. I am going to think of 3 things I'm grateful for, and I'm going to do the best I can today. When those feelings of sadness come over you, look at them. Don't be them, just watch them. And remember this, everybody feels sad at various times in your life. I lost 3 girlfriends in 5 years. It makes me sad to this day. But I don't want to live in sadness. I want to live in optimism. I want to find the little things that make my day worthwhile, and the big things. Anyway, I just want to thank you so much. It's wonderful being here, and thank our hosts profusely for having these kind of discussions. They're very important. Have a great day.
Well, what powerful and vulnerable remarks from Goldie Hawn. I was really struck by her commitment to youth mental health, to all of our mental health, the power of our minds and emotions, and how we build a society committed to helping each other thrive over our lifespans. As Goldie mentions, our ability to connect and to fight loneliness is partly dependent on our mental and emotional health, and learning these key skills early in life has a profound impact as we age. On behalf of all of us, Goldie, we thank you for your dedication to this cause and for being with us here today.